Hey everyone, Warwick's here. So we're back after the new year. Meant to do these videos a little bit earlier, but decided that I needed a little bit of a break from video creation, content creation over the holiday break. It's a nice little way to step back, refresh, and now I'm ready to get back strong into it. So I hope you had a wonderful Christmas, happy Hanukkah, Passover, any and all holidays that you might have celebrated over the past, probably what, 2 to 3 weeks since I've last done videos. Happy New Year's as well. Welcome to 2023. May it be better than 2022 was for you. If you follow my Twitter, you probably saw my thread on 2022. For me, I've talked about it extensively on my Twitter and through Instagram and stuff like that. So I'm not going to get into it here because today I want to look at the Feral PTR talents. So this build did get updated a little while ago rather. And at the time that the developer notes were released, they hadn't updated the trees yet on Wowhead, and PTR of course wasn't up. Now I did a video on Guardian and Balanced Druid. Go check those out if you're interested in those specs. Feral Druid, the changes aren't necessarily as game changing as they are for like Guardian and even the Balanced tree, but there are some talents here that some talent adjustments in terms of trying to swap the talents around and kind of reshape the tree a little bit that make it a lot more that kind of potentially adds some variety playstyles into the build, and allows for, I think, for some smoothing out of some talent build potential. All right, so from the standpoint of this video, what we're going to do is we're going to kind of talk about both trees, because both trees got changes, of course. We've talked about them for Guardian and Balanced Druid. We'll kind of talk about what the Feral tree looks like with some of the small changes that were made. The impact on Feral overall is a lot less in the class tree. For the spec tree, we'll see what kind of build diversity we can get. I'm going to click around at some things. We'll look at both single target and AoE builds, and then we'll go from there. So let's go ahead and get started with the class tree. Class tree, of course, they added this connection here, this connection here. These are the biggest ones. And they also made it so that instead of starting with Thrash, you start with Rip as your first code of default. You get Rake and Rip along with Shred, so you get the very core functionality of your spec. Those three talents really kind of make up the very basic fundamental core of Feral Druid. So to start off with, of course, you're still going to take Thrash, even though they, created some new connections. You still, because you can't get the Killer Instinct from Rip, Thrash and Improved Swipe are still going to be very much mandatory. Along with Killer Instinct, of course, got reduced from 3 points to 2 points, which helps the point economy in the tree. Now, of course, right now we're at 4 talent points, and so we got to look around and figure out what to do with the rest. I still think we're coming down here to grab Moonkin Form, Sunfire, Starfire. Now, of course, Star Surge got moved over here a little bit, mainly so that if you wanted to have Star Surge, you kind of have to go out of your way to get it, but you do get, of course, Sunfire now by default, so you can tag from range if you need to, for like world questing or something like that, or if you're spending time away from the mobs, you now have the core, kind of core 4 Balanced Druid spells in Sunfire, Moonfire, Wrath, and Starfire, of course, to spend in Moonkin Form if you have to have time away from the boss. In terms of other talents here, we need 1 more point to go with. I'm going to go ahead and just grab Iron Fur because I think it's going to be the most valuable point here. There's arguments for grabbing Frenzied Regen to give you some more sustain. There's arguments for grabbing Hibernate in Mythic Plus if you need the control. Think Quarter Stars for the Bat. After you do the second boss and you're doing the little spy event, you can grab Hibernate to help CC the Bat so that they don't do the hypnosis effect. But I think generally speaking, Iron Fur, outside of the niche case of needing Hibernate, I think is going to be the most valuable point. Of course, you're still going to grab Feline Swiftness to get your movement speed. I think you take Skull Bash in all situations, as well as Primal Fury. I think these 3 talents are just very core to Feral. We're also going to go ahead and grab Astral Influence and improve Sunfire to kind of give it the cleave effect. And then, of course, I think you're still grabbing Wild Charge, Soothe, and Stampeding Roar. We need 2 more points now, and I think Thick Hide is just the best overall use of the talents here, getting 6% damage reduction on a spec that has some decent defensive tools and some good sustain through Predatory Swiftness. But anytime you can take less damage, the better you can make your healer, make your healer's lives, make your own life easier. You're going to take it. Of course, you're going to grab 3 in the Kara's Teachings. I think you grab Ursol's and Nature's Vigil as well as Innervate. Now they made it so that in the next build, Innervate will be usable in bear form. I kind of wish they would just make it usable in cat form and just make Innervate useful in all forms. I think that'd be a nice little quality of life update for Feral So Blizzard, if you happen to be watching this, please go ahead and make this usable in just any form. Moonkids don't lose form to do it. Bears don't lose form to do it. Of course, Restos don't lose form to do it. Feral is kind of the outlier here, and I think it would just be a nice quality of life adjustment to make Innervate usable in Feral form. So just please do so. Here, I think you grab Incap Roar or Mighty Bash depending on what you need. Incap Roar generally more useful in Mythic Plus. Mighty Bash might be useful in an ad situation in Raid, should you need it. But my experience so far, with your normal at least, and as my Raid team is started to proc Heroic, is that we don't really need a single target stun. Incap Roar is really only going to be useful on Trash, but again, Mythic Plus, you can kind of figure it out. Like if you have Stun Totem, Shockwave, well, I guess no Prot Warriors taking Shockwave, but you have like Stun Totem from Shaman or Chaos Nova, whatever the case may be. If you have multiple stops, then maybe Incap Roar isn't your best choice. You can go grab Mighty Bash to get that clutch single target stun, but I think you can choose either one of these. It's just kind of a point of preference. You are going to take 2 points in Wellhunted Instincts as well as Protector of the Pack. And then for your last point, I think generally speaking you can do a Renewal, but there are some fights in the Raid where it's improved Stamp Roar is going to be a good choice. I think Taros, where the pie slices happen roughly about every 1 minute and 15 seconds. So if you're the only Druid, or you don't have Warlocks or whatever the case may be, you can Stamp Roar every single one. So that's a fight where just having that to help your Raid mobility be useful, you sacrifice a little bit of your own sustain to help your entire Raid move a little bit better. I think that's worth it in the long run. This last point, I think it's kind of interchangeable between the two depending on what you're doing and what your content is. I'm going to put Renewal here just for now, but again, Stamp Roar has niche use to where I think it is better in some situations, on certain fights and in certain dungeons as well. Alright, I think this build, like I said, for the most part on the Druid tree, not a lot that's affecting Feral at all. You get Sunfire, basically, you know, you were taking kind of the Sunfire and Sunfire Cleave. It's just the talents are kind of rearranged. In terms of the new talents, things like Matted Fur got a icon update, but like Forest Walk, there is a possibility you could go grab Forest Walk if you didn't want like Renewal or something like that, just so that you can get the movement speed increase. I think there is room for that to be a potential point. Now it'd only be 1 point instead of the 2, but I think there is room that you can make the argument for that. I just think Renewal, an off GCD 1.5 minute 30% heal is just really powerful. So Forest Walk, the new talent, doesn't really have a place for Feral Druid. I think really it may only have a place for potentially Dream of Cenarius bear builds. So it's an interesting talent, but I think it's just kind of in a place that it's just not useful overall for most Druid specs, but particularly not Feral. Alright, so let's go look at the Feral tree now. Now, some small adjustments have been made to this tree. Some talents got shifted around and things like that. We're just going to talk about those as we get through the builds. Let's start with like a pure single target. So think of a fight like Taros where there's no ads at all. And there's no ads. You're just doing straight up patchwork style fight where things like Primal Wrath are just not going to be all that useful to you. I think here you get some interesting choice in your build. You can grab Omen of Clarity, you grab Predator, you grab Merciless Claws because you're going to need the point. Maybe not actually, which, this is shred dealing increased damage, so it's good for single target. But Sabertooth and Pouncing Strikes, I think these right here are the 5 points in a pure single target build that you can't really skip. I think something like Merciless Claws and then 2 points in Tireless Energy to get you down to the rest of the tree is good. Primal Claws could get there if you're looking to spend more on finishers, but you're kind of limited by your energy in order to do that, so I don't think it's really there. So Double Clawed Rate got moved up here and kind of moved to the side under Primal Wrath, and Tear Open Wounds came from where Infected Wounds is now to this spot, which is, I think, perfectly fine. This kind of leans into like AoE right here. We'll talk about the AoE builds in just a little bit, but we'll kind of talk about how this kind of just, there's a connection here, but I think it kind of dead ends. Of course, you're going to grab Survival Instincts that got moved way up the tree here. It used to be down here. It's now up here at the top of the at the 8-point gate. For single target, I still think you grab Sudden Ambush, and you're still going to grab Infected Wounds. Taste for Blood did get buffed from 2.4% to 4.8%, but the problem is that Taste for Blood is still a 2-point talent, and the point economy in these builds just don't allow Taste for Blood to be there. Blizzard is trying to make some changes to make things like Taste for Blood and Rampant Ferocity better talents, make Ferocious Bite feel like it's something worth using again by nerfing bleeds. which I think is incredibly short-sighted. And Blizzard, if you've seen my ats to you on Twitter, please cancel the feral nerfs. The spec is not like a powerhouse right now in terms of damage overall. It's in a decent place. It's probably even a little underpowered right now in terms of damage. So if you're still planning on nerfing those bleeds, like, I think that's short-sighted, and you're gonna basically kill the spec in favor of balanced Druid, which feels really bad. Because for the first time, feral has actually felt really good to play in all content. At least the first time in a while. It's good in all content. It's always been decent in raid, but Mythic Plus, it's always struggled. Now it feels good in Mythic Plus, but now you're trying to shift that power out of the bleeds, which makes it fun to me, and now putting it back into Ferocious Bite, trying to go back to that Shadowlance BFA playstyle. I think that's a short-sighted decision, and I think you need to go ahead and revert all of the bleed nerfs. You can leave the talent buffs in there for all I care. Whatever, Taste for Blood's still probably not going to be picked until you make it a 1-point talent, but then it kills your synergy in the tree with Sudden Ambush, so you got to make a choice on it. You are going to grab Dreadful Bleeding because rip damage is always good. It's still the primary part of your damage profile, so anytime you can increase rip damage, you take it. Berserk, still very good. Predatory Swiftness, very good in combination with Protector of the Pack. So I think overall you're still looking at these having some really nice synergies. For this row, I think it's actually really interesting because we need 5 points, and guess what? There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 points here. So we're going to grab Raging Fury, still is the best one, getting longer Tiger's Fury versus more combo point generation out of Tiger's Fury. Raging Fury is just, to me, the best. You're going to grab Berserk Heart of the Lion, Moment of Clarity, as well as Berserk Frenzy. They tied all the Berserk trees very much together now, which I really, really quite enjoy. And then you're going to grab Brutal Slash. Wild Slash is, there is potential if you're just not a big fan of the Brutal Slash playstyle. I've been learning the Brutal Slash playstyles and kind of discover why it's really good. Still don't use it in my Mythic Plus build, personally. But I think there's definitely room for me to be able to do it. I still like having spammable swipe over Brutal Slash. Alright, now for this part of the tree, of course, we're going to grab Blood Talons. Lion Strength you can use if you're just not a fan of the Blood Talons play. I'm so used to playing Blood Talons and using the 3 different builders over time to get the Blood Talons build that even when I was trying to play Lion Strength at the start, I still found myself doing Blood Talons habit. So I just switched to Blood Talons. Might as well get the extra damage. Right. And then the other major points that I would spend here for a single target build would be Frantic Momentum. Just because Cat's Curiosity, while it definitely helps for energy regeneration, it doesn't really help with damage. Carnivorous Instincts doesn't allow you to get to the part of the tree that you need to get to, which is here with Soul of the Forest and Circle of Life and Death. Now, I think that for this choice node, of course, Circle of Life and Death, Soul of the Forest, I think these are just good talents. They're very, very good talents, and you're still very much a dot-based focused spec. And so having Circle of Life and Death make your dots tick faster, like, we like that. So, all right. Now, for this choice node, Incarnation versus Convoke, I think you really need to sim yourself for this. I actually was playing Convoke because I just assumed Convoke was better. And I woke up one day and was like, why don't I play Fangs of Ashurmane or Avatar of Ashurmane? I think I called it Fangs in my head when I did that. But anyways, so I ran a sim, and I just basically literally chose the same talent build and switched. The only thing I switched was Incarnation and Convoke. And for me, my sim showed that there was like a 3,000 to 4,000 DPS increase by playing Incarn. So for this, I'd say sim yourself. I think you probably need to do it either way. I think if you're playing Incarn, then you have to play Ashurmane's Guidance. If you play Convoke, then running Ashurmane's Guidance becomes a little bit less mandatory. So because for me, I'm running currently Incarn because it's just still simming better for me. I'm going to go ahead and grab Ashurmane's Guidance. Then you have 3 points left to spend in the tree. And I think for single target, there's some interesting choices here. I think you can look, and I still need to see the numbers. I still need to do some crunching on Lunar Inspiration. It got a huge buff in the development notes, so we still need to kind of see where we're at with it. I think Lunar Inspiration, if it does as good, if not better damage than Feral Frenzy, might be worth in sort of a pure dot-based, uptime-based playstyle where you run Lunar Inspiration, Adaptive Swarm, and then a point in Carnivorous Instincts. You could go a point in Unbridled Swarm as well, but I just don't see that being all that useful because you're looking at one single target. So you might as well get, Tiger's Fury gives you 15%. Instead, now you get 21%. Anytime you can get a damage bonus is good. You can also come over here and put a point in Vein Ripper or Rip and Tear if you'd like to as well. I think this last point is kind of flexible, depending on what you're looking at. Vein Ripper, of course, now getting a buff from 25 to 33% longer, which helps with your pandemic windows and such. So there's possibilities you could do that. I think Rip and Tear might also still be a good option because you're going to be reapplying your Rip quite often. So last point is flexible. I think you can kind of pick and choose what you want. I'd say sim it and see what you can find out. By the way, sim talent's in top gear on raidbots.com. So I think this is kind of like your pure single target build. It doesn't really change. It's just the way that your talents flow. I think feels a lot better overall. And then, like I said, Lunar Inspiration, we're going to have to kind of see the numbers on. But my guess is that because they buffed it by like 66%, that it's going to be worth taking in pure single target situations. For AoE, you're going to change up a little bit. You're going to grab these talents here. You grab these 9 points, I think are mandatory at the top. You're going to grab Rampant Ferocity, Survival Instincts, and Infected Wounds. Now, Tear Open Wounds, it kind of makes you feel like you have to run into Taste Your Blood. But the problem is that you still are taking Infected Wounds because you are getting now 2 rakes. So getting that extra rake damage is always good. And then, of course, the slight movement speed reduction, it's kind of whatever. That's not the important part of this talent. So Taste for Blood still kind of finds itself on the way out overall. Of course, you're still taking all 3 of these talents. They're very important. And then, of course, you still have, guess what? 5 talent points to get to the bottom of the tree. You take all 5 of these. Now, typically, for maximum DPS, you technically take Brutal Slash. For me, as a quality of life thing, I prefer Wild Slashes. I would like this to be increased based on, like, bleeds that you have. But, you know, whatever. The old Wild Flesh Rending talent. But Wild Slashes or Brutal Slash, I think either one is perfectly fine to take. And then, of course, you're going to grab Blood Talons. And then in Rip and Tear, because you're going to be reapplying Primal Wrath a lot through Tear Open Wounds, this applies Rip and Tear to all those targets. You still take Frantic Momentum, Soul of the Forest, Circle of Life and Death. Apex Predator's Craving is going to be really good here as well, because you're going to get the rips out on multiple targets. And with Apex, basically, you can take your free between Primal Wrath applying all the rips that you need, Apex letting your next Ferocious Bite be free and deal maximum damage, plus Rampant Ferocity. Like, there's that talent synergy across the tree where you really only are going to Ferocious Bite when you have an Apex proc. And the thing is about Apex is that it also procs Soul of the Forest. So you can actually use your Apex Ferocious Bites as a way to help you regen energy a little bit. I've taken advantage of that quite a bit. And then for your last 3 points, I think you got some options here. I'm personally a fan of Incarn into Ashmane's Guidance. I know in the Bees build, you run Adaptive Swarm into Unbridled Swarm as well. And then, of course, something like Feral Frenzy to help you do the big combo points. So, like, right now, like, my Mythic Plus build, again, doesn't really change. It's just, again, the pathing on it feels a little bit better. So the changes overall for Feral Druid, I think, for the most part, don't impact anything build-wise. You're still basically taking the same builds as you were before. It's just the pathing to get around those builds is a little bit cleaner. Like, you're not taking Tear Open Wounds in a pure single target situation, even though you're not taking Primal Wrath. So they just made some of the pathing feel better for both single target and AoE situations. So overall, I think the Feral tree is going to be just fine. In terms of the talent builds, I like what they've done with the tree, just made it a little bit more quality of life friendly. Biggest things about Feral are going to be things like, I want Innervate to be usable in cat form. I think that's just natural because all the other specs can now do it themselves, so don't leave Feral on the outside looking in for that. And please cancel the planned bleed nerfs, Blizzard. The spec is already starting to underperform a little bit versus all the other specs in the game, and nerfing the bleeds is only going to basically kill the spec. If it's a PvP concern, nerf the bleeds in PvP only, but leave the ones alone in PvE, because the spec really does need probably some buffs actually in this case. And I really just want you guys to really pay attention to the data that's out there on Warcraft logs, plus your own internal data, and hopefully you're really paying attention and seeing that Feral as a bleed based spec is actually a quite fun playstyle to play. I think it's really, really good for the spec to do, and it's very easy to maintain everything with just a little bit of practice. And nerfing the bleeds to try and make Ferocious Bite feel valuable again, I don't think is the right way to do it. If you need to, buff Ferocious Bite on its own. Don't nerf the bleeds to try, like, nerfing something to make something else powerful, I think is the wrong way to go about it. Like, if you want Ferocious Bite to feel impactful again, just buff Ferocious Bite and leave the bleeds alone, because the way the spec plays right now, currently on live, is very satisfying, incredibly fun, and the numbers kind of reflect the fact that you feel like you're making an impact. By nerfing the bleeds, you're pushing the spec even further down next to Survival Hunter in terms of damage profiles and raid and a Mythic Plus as well, and I think it's just incredibly short-sighted for you guys to make the decision to nerf a spec that's already starting to underperform, as people have been getting gear and as more and more logs have been pushed out for raid, and even Mythic Plus as well. So that's my plea to Blizzard. Please cancel the planned bleed nerfs for Feral in the 10.0.5 PTR builds, because they're just short-sighted and are unnecessary to the spec. Anyways, guys, that's my thoughts on the Feral PTR build and some potential builds that you could be looking at, and kind of just overall my thoughts on the changes that they made. If you like the video, make sure to like, comment, share, subscribe, all that fun stuff. You know, the YouTube cloud stuff that we have to do in every video, because it actually does legitimately help. The more I say it, the more likely you are going to do it. I know it sucks. I hate saying it. I know you hate hearing it. I hate hearing it on videos, so I know, like, this isn't fun for anybody, but it's just the way YouTube works. So until the next video, all, I hope you're all staying safe. I hope you're enjoying yourself. You have a happy new year. Be safe. Have fun gaming. And I will see you all in the next video.